New York's classic rock, Q104.3.
Little Steven Van Zandt, you so much a part of our story. People ask, is he actually an employee here? Like, yes, you should be.
Technically, I am, I guess. You guys were the very first radio station to take my syndicated radio show, Little Steven's Underground Garage, which is we're right at the 20-year point, I think. I should know this, shouldn't I? But I think we're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And you broke the ice because everybody in the country turned me down. And,
we were the only ones stupid enough to do it.
I sent out the demo, and it landed on everybody's desk on 9/11, so that didn't help, but it was a big icebreaker when one of the most important stations in the country decided to do it. Everybody said, you can't put all, at that time, whatever, 50 years of rock and roll in the same place, and you can't include soul music, you can't include blues. It's never going to work, and I just knew it would work because a lot of people who grew up with all of these things, like me and you, we're not that narrow, in our tastes. So I knew that if I could connect the dots between all the different subgenres, that it would be a kind of a template for a new kind of, a new kind of format.
26 years ago, the grand high exalted mystic ruler of the old place said, rock and roll is dead. There's no money left in classic rock. It's great music, but nobody cares. And I said to him, why would you believe that? And he was waving a sheaf of papers in front of me. And thanks to the late Steve Young, who said, it's not dead. It goes up and down. Just, like a restaurant. A bad restaurant goes out of business. A great restaurant is packed. Said, let's start a great radio station. And me and Scott Muni, from NEW, and Maria and Mark Coppola from K-Rock, and Carol Miller and Jim Kerr coming over from PLJ, and sort of put all of us together. And here we are, for me, 22 years. And we've got as many listeners under the age of 30 as we do over 50. You know why? Because the music's cool. It's very simple. The music's cool.
Yeah, it's not only cool, but it's part of what I call the Renaissance period, which means it's never gonna, it's never gonna be uncool, okay? Because it's a once in a lifetime, or once every 100 years occurrence. And I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. I believe, the 60s will be studied for hundreds of years to come. It's just one of those things that pops up every millennia or so, and we happen to live through it, and the resonance, to this day, what happened in the 60s is still resonating throughout the pop world today. I mean, in various subgenres, and various hybrids, but basically, the roots of what's going on today, you can trace directly back to the 60s and even the 50s, but certainly the 60s and 70s, yes, things like hip hop are a new sort of hybrid coming from those days, but same spirit, same attitude, a lot of the same roots, and we always had that mixture of things going on under the umbrella of rock. It was a big umbrella, I mean,
I always say to people there.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What I've always said on the air, I've quoted your story 1,000 times about commercial art in books, in movies, in music. It was such a period of high quality. But
Exactly.
we've got the biggest tent in musical fairgrounds. When people say, well, you can't play music from the 60s today, it's not by decade, it's by content. Just with the early 60s pop music that we grew up in that was fun as kids, but that has nothing to do with Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and the Beatles and the Stones. What was happening from 66 on is always going to be cool. When will, when I touch the sky, when will Won't Get Fooled Again? When will these songs ever not be cool? I mean, there's a difference. I try to explain to people, it's not by year, it's not temporal. it's visceral, it's emotional.
Yeah, and the products of that moment, okay, which is not going to come again, again for another 100 years or whatever, just like Beethoven and Bach and Mozart and those dudes, I mean, that doesn't get old. Oh, Tchaikovsky, that's too old. We should throw him out. I mean, let's get all new music for the ballet. Forget Tchaikovsky. He's too old. No, I mean, these things were created in that moment, and because of a magical, confluence, of factors. And like I say, when the most commercial, I mean, when the greatest art being made is also the most commercial, you've got yourself a renaissance, and that's what we had, But I mean, the mixture was, much more fluid in those days. I mean, I remember Roscoe, our only, every town had one basic FM station at first, and NEW was ours. And I remember Roscoe playing Psychedelic Shack like 6 times in a row, I mean, we were, that psychedelic period was, starting to go into psychedelic soul. And man, we embraced it, I mean, I remember that just like it was yesterday. I mean, he literally, I think it was Psychedelic Shack or one of them, or, one of those, they had like 7, great, the Temptations had like 7 great psychedelic soul numbers. Whatever the first one was, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, or Cloud Nine, I forget which one was first, but he played it like 5 times in a row, just because everybody was so happy of this coming together of the different racial, races are coming together. Jimi Hendrix, of course, was the king of psychedelic anyway, so that he was representing the entire Black race and American Indian race at the same time. And the Sly and the Family Stone was there, and George Clinton was there, and so there was a wonderful little coming together in that late 60s period of the races, as well as the subgenres of music, and rock was just embracing it all, man, I kind of missed that, man. So I started my own format doing the same thing, basically, doing the same thing that you were doing back then, whether it was on NEW or, Q104 or whatever,
It is funny. Some people say, listen, you can't play the Foo Fighters and the Beatles. It's not, those are 2 different radio stations. Ask Dave Grohl what he thinks of that statement. It's stupid. As you said, I always say we have the biggest musical tent in the fairground. I love jazz. I love classical, but they're so snobby. Jazz people, and you and I love jazz as well. But when you talk about Return to Forever, they go, well, that's not jazz. Yes, it is. It's done in a different style, but it is. Or there's no such thing as a 20th century classical composer. Of course there is. You just have to listen to it and see which way the trends are going. It's what you're saying Copeland is not classical music. That's the way I feel about it. The other day I played Thunderclap Newman, Something in the Air. Like, why because it fit what we were doing. It doesn't mean I can't play Green Day. Our audience is hipper than people give them credit for. And when you think about what we've done, the way we bookend Sundays between Breakfast with the Beatles, Jonathan Clark doing Out of the Box, playing new big rock songs in indies, and then you, and everybody goes, what are those guys doing? And I want to say, that's why we're here for 25 years. Because we serve great food, and sometimes we serve Brussels sprouts and sometimes it's tuna, but it's all great food. If you come into this restaurant, you're going to get music food that you're going to love.
Yeah. And it's obvious to those of us who are not bean counters, who are not accountants, who are not lawyers, and actually are music people, it's obvious what works and what doesn't. If music is your entire life, the problem with content in general, not for you necessarily, but our world in general, TV, radio, movies, at some point, the corporatization of it all, started to narrow the field in terms of what's possible. And, suddenly accountants are making, artistic business decisions, and they have absolutely, no qualifications whatsoever, to do that. So they look at, like you were saying, short-term statistics, look at what happened this month. Let's all jump on that.
That is exactly the mindset that killed NEW. And it's something that you said to me many years ago about bean counters. When you say accountants are ruining art or the music business, it's not, it's bad accountants are doing it. When people say, do they tell you what to play? No, they tell us to make money. They tell us to be successful. And if you're doing that, they don't micromanage something that's successful. And it's something that you said, I'd love to share with the audience about how I remember it vaguely, but you talked about how every classic rock band that we loved, where you invested in the first album and they didn't hit their stride, the big money, big hit album, to like the fourth or fifth album, whether it was Pink Floyd, or even though the Beatles were phenomenal, look what Sgt. Pepper's became, even bigger than anything. For Bruce and the E Street Band, from Greetings to Born to Run. And as you always said, the bad accountants cut off the investment after the third album. And they don't look that by the time you figure it out and you've toured for 2-3 years and you've written 2-3 albums, that's when it starts to coalesce and you do your best work.
Yeah, because there's one simple truth. Greatness is not born, it's developed. Okay. And that's the key that accountants just can't relate to. I mean, these are the guys that you used to go. They used to have an office down the hallway, and you'd go and talk to them around March so they could do your taxes, and then they go back into their cave, for the next 11 months. Now they're the CFO, and of course the CEO of most companies, honestly, is just a front. They're the nice, it's a good guy, bad guy thing. The CEO is the front, he's the nice guy, and pretending he's in charge. And the CFO is actually in charge, okay? So the guy that used to do the taxes once a year is now running these companies, and you wonder why, we're drowning in mediocrity, that's why,
it is sad. You see it in baseball. That's how it's done. Like who to bat. The pitching changes dictated by the statistics. Like no, that the old drunken guys were better managers than these guys because they just had a sense of who was pitching well or not in every walk of life of what you see, of like, just, do you trust the process? I just read there was a last quote in the Rolling Stone. Lear Cohn, music biz executive, now does music on YouTube. And he had a great quote just to what we're saying. He said, when a doctor graduates medical school, you don't give the guy a bag of scalpels and say, go operate. He becomes a resident. He follows a doctor. He watches surgery. He starts with something simple. After you graduate medical school, you start to become a doctor. He said, so somebody puts up a YouTube video or a TikTok thing and you sign them, then you say, go out on the road and perform. But you've got no tools. You've got no skills. These bands that have Bruce and the E Street Band, U2, Fleetwood Mac, Stones, Paul McCartney, Ringo, every band that's been touring their whole lives, how many, that 10,000 hour thing, how many hours and hours of clubs did you learn so that when you're on stage, whether you're playing in Asbury Park or you guys are playing in Hyde Park, you got it. You've done it. You're just doing your best show.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's obviously, it's tough to compare it to those days, for somebody like, the Beatles, we've talked about this many times. We discovered them halfway through their career. All right. They had been doing, 6 sets a night, 7 days a week for months at a time. That's an incredible work ethic, and, so by the time we discover them, man, they're very sophisticated and and very ready for for their close up, but what you said before is very important about the baseball manager, whether it's a baseball manager or a record company executive. There was this thing called instinct, and that's how our entire industry was built, really, on instinct. uh, you know and some guys had it and some guys didn't. And what happened when the corporations took over, they didn't feel confident enough to rely on instinct anymore. We need something more solid than that. So they cut off the whole top end of what could be, so that they could avoid the bottom end of what occasionally might happen. Somebody having signing a band and them not succeeding or whatever. Yeah, that's going to happen too. But you got to have the flexibility of both extremes in order to have that greatness happen. And suddenly instinct was thrown out. Imagination was thrown out. Curiosity was thrown out. All of those things that make our country so great, as well as our art. Suddenly it was all about the bottom line and the next fiscal quarter. If we had to worry about the next fiscal quarter, I mean, the highway system would have never been built.
Yeah, listen, you want to make money, you want to be successful, but commercial art is still art. And when I think about what we've been playing these last 25 years, these songs just jump out of the speakers. They always have. And,
Yeah.
whether we're playing a ballad or we're playing the loudest thing you ever have. And, classic rock is loud and silly and stupid or powerful and emotional, and it's artistic and it's basic. We play the Ramones and we play classic Yes. We play Bruce and we're playing Motley Crue. And how does that all fit together? Because it does. Because
Yeah.
it just does.
Oh, that's easy. I go from the Jive Five to the Clash, to Sam Cooke, to the Green Day or whatever, and that works. So it can work if there's a musical mind behind it who sees the connection. If I see the connection, others are going to see the connection. That's how I feel about it. I'm not an uncommercial guy. You know what I mean? Not by choice anyway. I feel my format is all hits. Everything I play is a hit. In my mind. I'm not playing anything obscure. I don't even play slow songs. Very, very often. It's just a rock and roll dance party, on the radio, and literally everything I play, I feel, is a hit, which is remarkable when you look at the over 1,000 bands we've introduced in the last 20
Wow.
years. 1,000,
Wow.
1,000. Yeah, and every one of them has at least one hit. That we're not playing it because we're nice guys. We're not. And we're not doing any favors. These people earn it. If we play "It's the Coolest Song in the World" this week by some new band, man, you're gonna like it. You're gonna like it if and we just it was one of those classic things where if you build it, they will come, and man, they have been coming.
It's a passion that we all have for music. We started as music geeks, and you can be as passionate or just casual about it as you want. And for me personally, I just want to say thank you so much as a friend and as a professional for waking up for all these years doing live Breakfast with the Beatles with me so many times. And, people say, well, how much do you pay him to do that? I'm like, do you think I could afford to pay Steve Van Zandt to host a live show or pay this band? And it's not just pickup guys. This is your band. Well, it was my band before you made them your band. I should point, I'm just, as we say in Brooklyn, hey, not for nothing, I'm just saying. But the Disciples of Soul and Mark Rivera, he's between Billy Joel and Ringo and his solo projects, and all of these guys from Andy Burton, Jeff Kazee, whoever's available that day, Randy Bachman stops in, or Mark Hudson or whoever's around, Lawrence Juber. And why do we all do it? because we love this music and we love communicating it, and you feel it in the audience. It's got that club vibe of what it was like when we're talking about the music and playing it. And I just want to say thank you. I mean, we've always been friends, but that's above and beyond because I know you enjoy it too.
No, no. Look, I'm always, I mean, one of the reasons why I started my format is the same reason why, I do a show like that. Other than we're friends, I'm always looking for a way to say thank you. To show my gratitude to people like the Beatles and all of those '60s guys. Especially the British invasion, but also the Americans. That just completely formed this template of my life. Expanded my consciousness to the point where if I never had another bit of input after 1969, I could release content for 100 years. If I lived to be 150 and did something every year, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy the amount of input I got in those years. So I was always looking for a way to say thank you, and and then look at somebody how great somebody like Paul McCartney, who's got better things to do, shows up comes to a show of mine and comes on stage, to endorse what I'm doing. Just it's his way of saying, keep up the good work. You know what I mean? I mean,
His passion for it is, people mistake it for ego. It's not ego of, "Ooh, I love the applause." It's the ego is about the music. It's about the experience.
Hey,
Which
no.
we all want. Is it ego
Yeah.
to go to a show?
Well, you could maybe mistake it as ego if Paul McCartney comes on stage with the E Street Band. It's sort of but not when he comes on stage with the Disciples of Soul. You ain't getting no publicity kick out of that. This is the purest of a musical endorsement that there could possibly be. I mean, it's only a couple thousand people in the audience, and probably no press. So I mean, he's a real musician doing it for the right reasons, obviously. I
mean, those are the people. So, and by the way, so we get this summer, Little Steven, the Disciples of Soul, Summer of Sorcery, live from the Beacon Theater.
Right. Yeah, we spent the part of the quarantine mixing it before I started writing the book, which took up the rest of the time. But that's coming out July 9th. So yeah, it can be pre-ordered now. And that we filmed every single show like we did on Soulfire. And Soulfire, we picked one song from here, one song from there, different cities. In this case, I mean, the Beacon show was just so good and so emotional because it was the end of a 3-year, 2-tour, part of my life. And really an emotional thing because I was reconnecting with my own life's work. It was the first time in 30 years, and had that wonderful band stay with me for the whole 3 years, all of those special people in that band. And turned out to be just such a great show that we just said, screw it. I'm not going to listen to the other 50 shows or whatever.
We're just doing this one.
We're just putting this out, man, because, and we didn't correct one single note. Okay, when you hear this thing, not one note was corrected,
It's not about perfect. It's about the energy of it. And there's some guest stars that stopped by that night.
Well, yeah. Well, we had Peter Wolf, Peter Wolf was actually opened, which, I should have opened for him. And he was there that night, and, but we had a couple of people stopping during the tour, which is all in the DVD, even down to two of our favorite Australian friends, Peter Garrett from Midnight Oil and Jimmy Barnes, who not only come in on Sun City, because, I don't have the kind of show. I mean, the Summer Sorcery show was a very much like a Broadway show. Every song had a purpose, and, so it wasn't like you could interrupt that in the middle. So we had the guests come in for Sun City at the end, which was a multi-artist thing anyway. And then a couple of occasional surprises. I mean, Jimmy Barnes, I had written Ride the Night Away for him first at the urging of Steve Jordan. And then we ended up cutting it with Southside, and I cut it myself. And so we got a chance to do it with Jimmy Barnes. And it's the most incredible performance because, I had to change the key for me, I'm like, geez, I wonder how Jimmy's gonna, deal with this, because it was very spontaneous. No real, we didn't over rehearse anything. He comes on stage and he just had no problem because he sang the whole thing an octave up. It's unbelievable when you hear it. We had a great moment in Arizona with Nils Lofgren. He came on stage and did one of his old songs from I think it's from Grin, or maybe it was one of his solo songs. I forget now, but really terrific. You got three guitars blazing away on that one. Nils and Mark Ribler and myself, and I forget what else is on the record right now, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Sun City, Jimmy Barnes, Peter Garrett, Jake Clemens, Garland Jeffries, and Bruce.
Oh yeah.
That's not bad. That's not bad for him.
Yeah, and we did and Ryan Shelley, the director, did a clever thing, kind of putting everybody in on the same song, on the DVD. So it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Steve, thank you so much for your time. And I mean, for this, and for always being there, for always being part of it and support, like I said, from Breakfast of the Beatles to everything we do. And, when people say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, that's the age-old question they ask everyone. I hope and pray in 5 years we'll be doing this and celebrating our 30th anniversary, because I love doing this. I love the connection with people, that it goes through the music. It's not about being a smart ass. It's not about putting people down or shocking people. I mean, there's that kind of radio, but it just never meant that much to me. Sharing this music when times are so tough, when we're a global pandemic, and playing, if I played the same 10 songs every Sunday morning, Let It Be, Here Comes the Sun, Getting Better, these songs of hope, these songs of love, Beware of Darkness, with a little help from my friends. It's like they wrote the soundtrack to the year of 2020 in our hearts, and people who've lost loved ones and friends. It was the most comforting, soulful music ever written. They could have written all those songs this year, and they would have had as much impact, if not more.
True. Oh yeah, no, you'll be doing this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Don't worry about that.
As will you. And, when we were kids, 60 years old or something, was like, oh my God, you got one foot in the grave, you're moving to Florida. Yeah, no.
No, forget it. No, we've completely changed the concept of chronological time. Okay, that's for sure. The entire rock era has changed that entire concept. All right. I didn't know anybody who was over 60. I don't think, nobody's grandparents even made it past that, I know personally, 7 or 8 now, people who are in their 80s who are working. Okay. Not in some senior citizen home. They're working on stage. They will be again on stage. 7, I think 8 people in their 80s, and in a year or two, the entire British invasion is going to turn 80. And a lot of them are still working. So, I did a whole thing on the radio show. You probably heard it, called Wisdom Art, having to do with getting older and the older artists, doing art that they couldn't have done when they were younger. And I included Marty Scorsese's Irishman and even Quentin Tarantino's,
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah.
Bruce's Western Star. There's certain art that only can happen with experience. And so it's a whole nother. It's sort of a whole nother kind of genre that has emerged since we started to just ignore chronological time and just, we're not getting older anymore, not mentally anyway,
As I always took the line that Pete wrote and Roger sang, "Hope I die before I get old." To me, I take that spiritually,
right.
That it's not the age of my bones or my joints. It's my passion. It's my love. And my financial advisor said, do you have a date in mind when you want to retire? And I said, I do. And he said, go. I said, when I draw my last breath on this earth. And he threw the pen down. And I said, what's more, I don't really know anybody who thinks any other way. You know, my friends, you, me, Billy J. Kramer, who's a dear friend of ours, who once said, Ken, there's more to life than rock and roll. I've never found it, but people have said that. And I thought, I can't say it any better than that.
Yeah, amen, amen, amen.
Thank you so much for this. I love you so.
All right, baby. Love you too.
All right.
New York's classic rock, Q104.3.